Okay, today we're diving deep into a war that you're in the middle of right now and every single second of your life. It's invisible, it's relentless, and it's happening inside your own body. We're talking about your immune system, the incredible, microscopic army that's fighting to keep you alive.
Seriously, right at this very moment, a war is raging on a microscopic scale. On your skin, inside your lungs, and your gut, your body is constantly being bombarded by an endless stream of invaders. And you know what's amazing? Most of the time, you don't feel a thing. That's because your internal army is just that good.
So, here's our battle plan for this explainer. First, we're going to size up the enemy in the invisible war. Then it's time to meet your body's army. After that, we'll break down the anatomy of a battle, play by play. We'll also see how your army is so good at remembering the enemy, and what happens when defenses turn on themselves. And finally, we'll look at the incredible modern medical reinforcements we're developing today.
All right, first up, the invisible war. You know, in any fight, you have to know your enemy. So let's take a look at the rogues gallery of invaders that are trying to make a home inside of you.
The enemy comes in all shapes and sizes. You've got viruses. These are the ultimate hijackers that take over our own cells to make copies of themselves. Then there are bacteria, which can pump out nasty toxins. You've got fungi, which are total opportunists, waiting for our defenses to be down. And then protozoans, these tiny parasites behind diseases like malaria. And here's the key thing. These guys aren't just sitting ducks. They have evolved some seriously clever tricks to get around our defenses.
So with all that trying to get in, who's standing in the way? Well, let's meet your body's army. It's this amazingly coordinated, super complex force of cells and proteins and organs, the whole shebang, that makes up your immune system. Your immune army is basically split into two main branches. First, you have the innate immune system. Think of these as your first responders, your frontline soldiers. They're always on patrol, they act instantly, and they recognize general danger signs. And then you have the adaptive immune system. These are your elite specialists, your special ops. They take a bit longer to get going, but their attack is laser-focused on one specific enemy. And, this is crucial, they remember that enemy forever. This here is basically the chain of command on the battlefield. It all kicks off when a scout cell, an antigen-presenting cell, captures an invader. It then takes a piece of that invader, called an antigen, think of it like the enemy's flag or uniform, and shows it to a helper T cell. That one moment, that presentation, is the signal that activates the entire adaptive army, mobilizing all the specialized troops we're about to meet. So let's meet these special ops units, starting with the T cells. First, you've got the helper T cells. These are the field commanders. They don't really do the hand-to-hand fighting themselves. Instead, they coordinate the entire battle by sending out chemical orders, called cytokines. Then you have the cytotoxic T cells. Man, these are the assassins. Their job is to hunt down and destroy any of your own cells that have been infected by a virus or have turned cancerous. The other star players in your adaptive army are the B cells. You can think of these guys as walking weapons factories. As soon as a helper T cell gives the order, B cells kick into high gear and start churning out millions of these proteins called antibodies. And these aren't just dumb bullets, they're biological smart missiles, each one programmed to lock onto one very specific target. They don't do the killing directly, but they tag the bad guys, marking them for destruction. Okay, so we've met the bad guys. And we've met our army. Now, let's see what it looks like when they actually go head-to-head. Let's break down the anatomy of a battle.
Pretty much every battle follows this same basic script. It starts with the breach. A pathogen gets past your skin or other barriers. Right away, that triggers recognition, where your frontline cells grab the invader. That leads to mobilization. The helper T cells sounds the alarm, which then kicks off the coordinated attack, where B cells launch their antibody missiles and the cytotoxic T cells go hunting. And finally, elimination, where the threat is wiped out and the mess is cleaned up. And here it is, the climax of the attack. This is a cytotoxic T cell locked onto an infected cell, but it isn't just blowing it up. It's actually doing something way more precise. The T cell injects proteins that trigger a process called apoptosis. It basically orders the infected cell to commit a clean, quiet suicide. This is so important because it prevents any viruses inside from escaping and spreading. But this is not a one-sided fight. Not at all. The enemy fights back with its own clever tactics. To stop our antibodies, some bacteria release enzymes that literally chop our smart missiles in half. To avoid getting eaten, others will build a slimy outer shell to make themselves too slippery to grab. It is a constant evolutionary arms race. So the battle is won,
But after the dust settles, something really incredible happens. The adaptive immune system, it doesn't forget. It creates veterans, memory cells, that make sure the next time you meet that same enemy, the fight is going to be over a lot faster. And just look at the difference between that first fight and the second. The first time you encounter a pathogen, it can take a week, maybe more, to really get the army going. But the second time, thanks to those memory cells, the response time drops to just a day or two. It peaks faster, and the sheer number of antibodies produced can be 100, even 1,000 times greater. This is immunological memory, and it's the reason you typically only get something like the chicken pox once in your life. Now, this powerful memory is the exact principle that makes vaccines work. A vaccine is basically a safe, controlled training exercise for your immune army. It introduces your body to a harmless part of the enemy. It could be a weakened virus, a single protein, or even just a set of genetic instructions, like in an mRNA vaccine. The point is, it lets your body build up that veteran army of memory cells without you ever having to get sick. So it's ready for a massive, overwhelming response if the real invader ever shows up. But like any powerful army, sometimes the immune system can make terrible mistakes. And this is the dark side of immunity, when the very defenses meant to protect you actually become the cause of the disease. A system failure usually happens in one of two ways. First, there's immunodeficiency. That's where parts of the army are weak or just missing, leaving the body wide open to infections. The other kind of failure is autoimmunity, and this is where the system gets confused and loses the ability to tell friend from foe. It tragically mistakes the body's own healthy cells as invaders and launches an attack, basically a civil war. A really heartbreaking example of this kind of friendly fire is organ transplant rejection. When someone gets a life-saving organ, their immune system just does its job. It sees this new tissue and says, hey, you're not from around here, and then it attacks, either with an immediate antibody assault or a slower T-cell attack. It's a tragic situation where your body's own defenses can destroy the very thing that was meant to save it. And this brings us to the final front, how modern medicine is learning not just to fight our immune system, but to actually take control of it and use its incredible power. Welcome to the era of immunotherapy. Remember those smart missiles that B cells make? Well, what if we could design and manufacture our own? It turns out we can. Using some amazing lab techniques, scientists can now create something called monoclonal antibodies. These are basically countless copies of a single, perfectly designed antibody that can be engineered to hunt down almost anything we want, from a cancer cell to a molecule causing inflammation. And this new arsenal is completely changing medicine. In cancer treatment, we can use these antibodies to basically paint a target on tumor cells, so our own T cells can find them and kill them. We can even attach tiny bits of chemotherapy drugs to them, creating guided missiles that deliver poison right to cancer cells while leaving healthy ones alone. And for autoimmune diseases, we can use them to intercept the faulty signals that are driving that self-attack, helping to calm the whole system down. So we've gone from being passive spectators in this internal war to becoming active generals, able to direct our own defenses with incredible precision. And that leaves us with one final thought. Now that we have the power to edit, enhance, and engineer our own immune army, what's the next frontier? What disease will we conquer next, now that we're finally learning to master this powerful, invisible force within all of us?